The moment everyone thought they knew Bilal Haz flipped completely. One day, he was the disciplined, wealthy, morally upright figure TLC built up as a stabilizing presence on 90 Day Fiancé. The next, insiders claimed the network quietly cut ties with him amid explosive allegations of financial manipulation and potential fraud. It wasn't a dramatic on-air confrontation or a public firing. It was silence, vanishing social media engagement, canceled appearances, and reworked promotions. All the signs of a quiet, calculated removal. Fans were left staring at screens, scrolling through episodes they had watched hundreds of times, wondering how someone portrayed as responsible and trustworthy could suddenly be at the center of such controversy. How did someone who preached accountability, discipline, and financial wisdom become accused of exploiting the very people who trusted him? The questions kept piling up. Viewers weren't just shocked. They were angry, confused, and deeply invested. Social media threads exploded with speculation, each comment adding fuel to the fire. Was TLC protecting their brand? Or had they finally realized they were sitting on a ticking time bomb? And if Bilal Haz's fall was real, what does it say about reality TV's power to elevate personas far beyond their credibility? At first glance, Bilal's story seemed simple. A disciplined, high-achieving professional entering a chaotic world of relationships for love and drama. But as clips resurfaced and fans re-examined his actions, patterns started to emerge. Small inconsistencies became glaring red flags. Moments once edited for laughs or tension were now being interpreted as evidence of manipulation and control. The prank with the rundown home wasn't just a quirky test of his partner's intentions. It now looked like a calculated move to assert authority, framed as entertainment for the camera. People began to ask, did the network see it and turn a blind eye? Or did they truly believe the persona they had promoted was harmless? Online communities started digging deeper into Bilal's claims about his professional life. Social media investigators compared his on-screen descriptions to public records and property listings. Alleged gaps, inconsistencies, and exaggerated portrayals of wealth began surfacing. What was supposed to be a narrative of success and discipline suddenly became a story of deception. The tension didn't stop there. As accusations mounted, fans speculated about the influence Bilal might have had over others. Supporters who engaged with business projects because they trusted his TLC credibility, only to feel let down later. Even if nothing illegal had been proven, perception alone carried enormous consequences. The public was no longer watching a reality star. They were observing a cautionary tale unfold in real time. And somewhere behind closed doors, TLC had to decide whether this controversy was worth managing or too risky to tolerate. By the time the network allegedly began removing Bilal from promotions and shelving planned appearances, the silence itself told a story louder than any public statement ever could. Fans noticed the shift immediately. He was everywhere one moment, gone the next. Posts stopped, engagement disappeared, and suddenly a carefully constructed image crumbled under scrutiny. Questions about accountability, responsibility, and trust circulated faster than ever. Could someone so seemingly composed really have been orchestrating control and manipulation behind the camera? What made this scandal so gripping wasn't just Bilal's actions. It was the combination of fame, perception, and the unseen decisions of a network balancing profit against risk. How much did TLC know? And when did they finally act? How could a figure presented as a moral authority allegedly mislead both his partner and the audience for so long without consequences? Every unanswered question piled tension onto the next, keeping fans and insiders alike on edge. And if you thought you understood the story after hearing the allegations, the next revelation might completely change how you see every single episode Bilal appeared in. The patterns fans are beginning to notice hint at something far deeper, far more unsettling than a simple on-screen persona gone wrong. When Bilal Haz first stepped into the 90-day Fiancé world, he looked like the answer to every reality TV fan's wish list: sharp suit, calm demeanor, and the kind of confidence that screams success. On screen, he was disciplined, financially savvy, and morally grounded, a stabilizing presence amid the usual chaos of whirlwind romances and dramatic revelations. The network painted him as the model partner, someone who could supposedly balance love, logic, and money. At first glance, he seemed untouchable, the kind of cast member you trust to manage both a relationship and a fortune without a hitch. But the cracks started showing almost immediately. It began with little things, easily dismissed as quirks or playful behavior. A prank here, a rigid insistence on certain rules there. For example, when he staged that rundown home scenario to test his partner's intentions, it was framed as a lesson in humility and trust. TLC edited it to look funny, relatable, even charming. The audience was supposed to laugh and nod along, seeing Bilal as someone teaching important relationship lessons. But for some viewers, it felt off, too calculated, too controlled. Like someone was playing a game where the other person didn't know the rules. Fans started noticing patterns in his behavior, small but consistent hints of control. It wasn't just pranks, it was how he positioned himself as the authority in financial decisions. Prenups, spending boundaries, lecture-like moments about responsibility, he presented them as helpful guidance. But the way they were executed often highlighted power dynamics rather than partnership. And while TLC leaned into it for drama, fans began reading between the lines. The network framed these interactions as typical relationship tension, moments to generate conversation. But many viewers started sensing something more manipulative lurking under the surface. Even early on, Bilal's words and actions sometimes didn't match. He preached honesty, discipline, and transparency, yet orchestrated situations that left his partner confused or embarrassed. And while you could chalk it up to reality TV editing, the repetition of these patterns raised eyebrows. Fans began asking, is this really about teaching lessons, or is it about control? And if it's about control, how far does it go? The humor in his interactions didn't hide the unease. On one hand, you could laugh at the awkward stunts or over-the-top lectures, but on the other, there was a lingering discomfort. The audience wasn't just entertained, they were watching someone subtly test boundaries, see how far they could push without consequences, all while the cameras rolled. And the more episodes aired, the more these moments stacked, creating an image that didn't quite match the polished introduction we got at the start. But then, fans started noticing something even bigger. Little inconsistencies turned into patterns, and patterns began hinting at a narrative that TLC hadn't fully revealed. Episodes that once seemed harmless were suddenly loaded with context, showing a side of Bilal that wasn't just quirky, it was strategic. Bilal Haz's approach to relationships was never just about romance. It was wrapped up in money, rules, and authority. Early on, he set strict financial boundaries, enforced spending rules, and leaned heavily on prenups. On the surface, it looked like discipline and responsibility. But for many, it read as dominance masked as guidance. The way he presented himself, as the final decision-maker, the one with the knowledge, the one who knew best, started to create tension both on-screen and off. Audiences could feel it, a mixture of fascination and unease, wondering how much of this was genuine care and how much was control. Then came the prank with the rundown home. What was framed as a lesson in trust quickly backfired. Fans erupted online, calling it manipulative, humiliating, and unsettling. Instead of a funny moment, it looked like a test designed to assert power. The psychological effect was immediate. Viewers empathized with the partner's discomfort, but also felt the tension of watching someone wield influence behind a polished veneer. For anyone in a relationship, it's jarring to see affection mixed with what feels like coercion. The audience wasn't judging characters so much as questioning the ethics of behavior packaged as entertainment. And yet, Bilal defended these actions publicly, framing them as necessary for growth and moral clarity. That only made viewers more suspicious. Why does someone need to test a partner in a way that creates stress or embarrassment? Why frame it as a lesson rather than an apology? Audiences could feel the contradiction. The persona on screen preached discipline, honesty, and moral responsibility. But the actions often suggested power was being measured and asserted. Fans also started noticing patterns in his financial discussions, lectures about spending, conditional generosity, and insistence on control in joint decisions. Psychologically, these behaviors can trigger anxiety, insecurity, and doubt, both for partners and the audience watching. Even for casual viewers, it creates discomfort. It's hard to enjoy drama when manipulation masquerades as guidance. The tension kept building with each new episode, leaving watchers asking, how much of this is TLC storytelling? And how much is a real-life dynamic of influence and authority? Just when it seemed like the relationship moments might settle, subtle manipulations emerged, showing that Bilal's approach to control wasn't occasional, it was patterned. Audiences began rereading scenes, analyzing tone, body language, and context. Every episode revealed a layer that wasn't just drama, it suggested deeper stakes. And as fans' scrutiny intensified, eyes began shifting toward Bilal's professional claims, with investigators quietly starting to notice inconsistencies between his on-screen persona and public records, hinting that the story of control might extend beyond the relationship itself. But as the episodes rolled on, fans didn't just watch, they investigated. Social media threads exploded with discussions about Bilal Haz's real estate claims. Viewers began cross-referencing his on-screen statements with publicly available property records, business filings, and social media activity. At first, it was casual curiosity, a fun way to see if a reality star's claims stacked up. But soon, inconsistencies started to appear. Properties he touted as investment holdings didn't always match public records. Some business entities seemed inactive, while others were far smaller than the persona suggested. Each discrepancy added fuel to a growing suspicion. Had Bilal exaggerated his wealth, or was there more to this story? Fans didn't stop there. They dug into social media posts, comparing what he shared online with what TLC showed on television. Patterns emerged. Certain claims were repeated, carefully framed, and reinforced by the cameras. Yet, outside the controlled narrative, things didn't quite add up. Discussions on commentary channels, Reddit threads, and fan groups exploded. What was once a personal critique became a collective investigation. Audience members felt empowered, questioning a figure elevated by reality TV to authority. The real shock wasn't just the discrepancies, it was how fame amplified them. Reality TV had given Bilal a platform, a veneer of credibility that extended into his personal and professional ventures. Followers and even casual fans trusted his authority because they had seen him on screen, assuming the persona translated into real-world expertise. When the inconsistencies emerged, the stakes felt higher. Allegations of misrepresentation and financial overstatement weren't just rumors, they were potentially damaging claims amplified by the trust built through television. Social media transformed into a kind of moral arbiter. Fans weren't just commenting, they were holding both Bilal and TLC accountable. Posts critiquing his behavior and questioning network responsibility went viral. The audience wasn't passive. They were pressuring the network to respond, analyzing every promo, every clip, every interaction. Every like, share, and comment became a signal that the story had grown beyond personal drama into a broader conversation about ethics, influence, and accountability. Each new discovery online reframed prior episodes, turning harmless interactions into potential evidence of manipulation. Fans began debating, should TLC have known? Were they complicit by allowing these dynamics to play out on air? Could the network face legal or reputational consequences? And as the scrutiny intensified, Insiders say the pressure reached the executive level, forcing TLC to confront a growing crisis behind the scenes, a challenge that was no longer about ratings or drama, but legal exposure and protecting the network's credibility. TLC suddenly found itself in a difficult position. On one hand, Bilal Haz was driving attention, generating views, and keeping fans talking. Controversy often translates into ratings, and drama is the lifeblood of reality television. On the other hand, the growing allegations of financial misrepresentation and manipulation couldn't be ignored. Every online thread, viral post, and fan investigation added pressure. The network was staring at a balancing act: continue to feature a controversial star and risk legal exposure, or quietly step back and protect their brand. Insiders say TLC chose the latter, but in the most subtle way possible. There was no public announcement, no dramatic firing. Instead, Bilal's appearances were quietly canceled. Planned storylines, interviews, and promotional segments that had included him were shelved. Social media engagement slowed and then stopped. Clips that once highlighted his presence disappeared from official channels. To the casual viewer, it might have looked like fading relevance or a change in storyline focus. But fans who had been following closely saw a pattern. This was deliberate, strategic, and meant to limit risk. The ambiguity only fueled speculation. Silence became part of the story, a vacuum that fans eagerly tried to fill with theories and assumptions. Some argued TLC was protecting itself legally, ensuring that unverified allegations wouldn't escalate into lawsuits. Others wondered if the network was simply trying to avoid the scandal dominating headlines and attracting advertiser scrutiny. Every skipped interview, delayed appearance, or missing social media post became a signal that something serious was happening behind closed doors. Fans began dissecting the absence of Bilal's on-screen presence with the same intensity they had analyzed his financial claims. Every former clip was rewatched, every interaction reinterpreted. Moments that were once seen as quirky or awkward were now examined as part of a larger pattern of behavior. The narrative shifted. Bilal was no longer just a controversial personality. He had become a symbol of what happens when reality TV fame intersects with real-world credibility and ethical boundaries. Even his own statements online contributed to the tension. They were vague, reflective, and focused on personal growth without addressing the allegations directly. Supporters framed this as maturity. Critics saw it as evasive. But either way, it reinforced the idea that the situation was far from resolved, and that the network's quiet approach was creating its own suspense. And as the public continued to speculate and scrutinize, perception began to shift. What had once been a story about a single cast member's behavior now became a broader conversation about accountability, network responsibility, and the long-term consequences of curated personas on reality television. Bilal Haz's story didn't end with his quiet disappearance from TLC's spotlight. What unfolded became more than just a personal scandal. It evolved into a cautionary tale about influence, perception, and ethical responsibility. Audiences started revisiting old episodes, watching with fresh eyes. Moments that once seemed harmless or entertaining now looked like calculated moves to assert control or project authority. Every lecture about money, every carefully staged test, every subtle assertion of dominance took on a new weight. Viewers realized that reality TV fame doesn't just entertain, it can amplify behavior, for better or worse. Fans began asking questions. How should networks verify a cast member's credibility before giving them a platform? What responsibility do they have when a curated persona misleads the public? And for viewers, what does it teach about trust, fame, and the seductive power of television authority? Each question added layers to the discussion, keeping the narrative alive long after episodes aired. Even with Bilal out of the spotlight, the story wasn't fully resolved. Speculation remained about unseen footage, undisclosed interactions, and the true extent of the alleged financial discrepancies. Fans debated whether his absence was justice, damage control, or simply a quiet way to avoid legal complications. The ambiguity fueled endless conversation, showing how a single narrative could ripple across communities and social media. And as audiences continued to dissect the past and speculate about what's still hidden, one thing became clear. This story isn't finished. Future developments could change everything we think we know, and fans are watching closely, ready for the next reveal. Watching Bilal Haz's journey unfold left many fans feeling a mix of shock, betrayal, and fascination. There's something deeply human about being drawn into someone else's story, especially when the person appears disciplined, trustworthy, and morally upright at first glance. Viewers invested emotionally because they believed in the persona TLC presented, a man who seemed to have it all together, a stabilizing presence amid relationship chaos. When inconsistencies and manipulative behavior began to emerge, the reaction was intense. It's the violation of trust that hits hardest, and in this case, it was compounded by the public nature of the events. Psychologically, this taps into a basic desire for fairness and predictability. People expect honesty in relationships, even televised ones, and when authority or expertise is weaponized, it triggers alarm. Financial control, pranks designed to test partners, and repeated assertions of dominance are all behaviors that signal imbalance. Audiences react not just to the acts themselves, but to what they reveal about character, power, and ethics. Watching a curated persona unravel forces viewers to reconcile what they were shown with what they now suspect. At the same time, there is a compelling drama in witnessing influence amplified by fame. Reality TV isn't neutral. It gives characters a platform that extends far beyond the screen. When someone like Bilal misrepresents himself, it creates a ripple effect. Fans feel deceived because their trust, however mediated through a television lens, was leveraged. This is why social media backlash grows so quickly. People aren't just commenting. They're assessing, interpreting, and demanding accountability. Empathetic takeaways for viewers go beyond judgment. Recognizing manipulation is about noticing patterns, repeated emphasis on control, inconsistency between words and actions, and public displays meant to reinforce authority. Understanding influence means asking, who benefits when someone's persona is elevated? How does edited content shape perception? Being aware of these dynamics equips fans to read between the lines, separating entertainment from ethical concern. Witty, observational commentary keeps the pace lively. Even in moments of disbelief, it's easy to laugh at the absurdity of staged pranks or exaggerated claims, while still acknowledging the serious implications. The push and pull between amusement and outrage sustains engagement, allowing viewers to digest the drama without feeling overwhelmed. And as we reflect on what happened, one thing is certain. Bilal Haz's story has left questions dangling in the air. Who else might be hiding discrepancies behind a polished persona? And what happens next in the 90-Day Fiancé universe when fame meets influence? The answers could be more shocking than anything we've seen so far. And fans are not going to want to miss what unfolds next. Bilal Haz's chapter on 90-Day Fiancé might have ended on screen, but the story is far from over. His disappearance from TLC's spotlight left fans with more questions than answers. Every canceled appearance, every fading social media post, every edited-out moment became a signal that something serious was happening behind the scenes. Audiences were left to connect the dots themselves, sifting through clips, online discussions, and insider whispers. The carefully curated image of discipline, authority, and financial success had cracked, revealing patterns that viewers couldn't ignore. The impact goes beyond Bilal himself. It's a reminder of how much influence fame can hold, how networks can amplify personalities, and how quickly public perception can shift when inconsistencies are exposed. Fans have become investigators, dissecting past episodes, challenging narratives, and debating the ethics of reality TV storytelling. What started as entertainment evolved into a study of trust, power, and accountability. And while the dust has settled in one sense, the universe of 90 Day Fiancé keeps spinning. Other cast members, storylines, and behind-the-scenes decisions are quietly stirring, hinting at more tension, surprises, and revelations waiting to surface. The questions raised by Bilal's scandal are only part of a larger pattern that fans are watching closely. Next time, we'll explore who else might be hiding behind a polished persona, and why the next season could be more explosive than anything we've seen. You won't believe what insiders are hinting at next.